This is required. So we must consult both ourselves, our jiva, our soul, and then Krishna himself, in order to understand our mind, senses, and body. So what is the soul required for? The soul is required for detachment. First, we have to understand things that are not favorable for us. We have to understand, okay, this particular thing in my life is not actually helping me in Krishna consciousness. We have to identify this, and therefore we have to become detached from it. That's the first duty of the soul in terms of understanding the field or the body. The second duty of the soul is attachment, which is, of course, attachment for Krishna. And how do we attach for Krishna? We create attachment for things that are favorable in spiritual life. We cultivate attachment for reading, for chanting, for serving the devotees. So these two things, detachment and attachment, are the duties of the soul when it comes to trying to understand the mind, body, and senses. So we can say that, yeah, the soul must learn how to reject what is not favorable for spiritual life and accept what is favorable for spiritual life. In order to go about this, in order to start this process of accepting and rejecting, in order to progress on the spiritual path, we need to be contemplative. Contemplation is very important in this practice of trying to understand the mind, body, and soul, and progressing. So this contemplation is important because, I mean, we take in a lot of philosophy. You know, we have Prabhupada's books, we have Bhagavatam, we have Bhagavad Gita. There's so much philosophy, there's so much shravanam, so much hearing to be done. But the depth of our realization, it depends on our contemplation. The depth of how we realize this knowledge that we're given by Prabhupada and by the devotees, it depends how we contemplate upon it and how much contemplation we do. Actually, Arjuna, he was a great example of this contemplation, we can say, or this art of asking first and then acting later. We know in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita that Arjuna, he wanted to go into the middle of the battlefield. He wanted to be there and contemplate. He told Krishna, take me to the middle of the battlefield, because he wanted to contemplate what is going on. Why is he fighting his family members? He had this propensity to contemplate, to ask first and then act. Therefore, it's no coincidence, actually, that the Gita was spoken in the battlefield. Because the battlefield, we can understand that it's a place where immediate knowledge is needed. You know, we need to know what to do. You know, because in 15 minutes, if I'm on the battlefield, in 15 minutes someone could come and attack me. So I need to know what to do right now. What do I need to do right now? And that's the first thing, immediate knowledge. We need to know what to do for, you know, the very short term. And then the second thing is ultimate instruction. Because on the battlefield there's always this idea of, I can die at any moment, someone can cut me down, I can leave my body. So ultimately I need to know what is beyond death. I need to know what is beyond the cycle of birth and death, what is beyond the body. So these two things are needed, immediate knowledge and ultimate instruction. And so this is what the Gita equips us with. It equips us with the knowledge of the present, of the nowness, and also the knowledge of the afterlife. And this is very important to understand that, okay, we need to both understand that we need to contemplate about the present and also the afterlife in order to get a full picture of what is our duty in terms of understanding the mind, body, and soul, and through that we can become detached from it. So these two things we should be contemplating. And so once the contemplation is there in the soul, I was talking about the two knowers of the field, the soul and the super soul. So once the soul, by his own will, you can say, starts contemplating in this way, he becomes ready to receive knowledge or guidance from Krishna. And that is where the super soul comes in. That's where Krishna comes in and gives his knowledge of the field. Of course, this depends on our surrender. Sisyastaham sadimam tvam prapanam. Of course, if we're contemplative and we're surrendered, then Krishna will come. But only if the surrender is there. Only if we are putting ourselves out there as a disciple, as a student of spiritual knowledge. Because this guidance is needed. We cannot just realize this spiritual knowledge. We cannot, what to speak of just the bodily platform of the mind, body and senses. We cannot understand fully how to overcome the mind, body and senses just on our own, just by the individual soul. Why is this? Because the mind and the heart is very impure, at least when we're practicing Krishna consciousness, when we're engaging in spiritual practices, and we're on the level of trying to progress. The mind is not, the heart is not purified. Therefore, we need this guidance, and we cannot contemplate without this guidance. I remember once upon a time, I came upon this tree. The locals, they called it this Chechen tree. They told me that this tree was very poisonous. That there's some kind of something in the bark that when you touch this tree, you get crazy rashes, and your immune system and your whole bodily functions, they start getting disoriented and like this. And they told me even just sitting in the shade of this tree can allow one to become, affected by this sickness. So I was thinking, wow, that's a very powerful poisonous tree, that just by touching this or just by sitting in the shade, you get affected by this poisonous tree. But then they told me something interesting, which is that always where this tree grows, there is another tree that grows always next to it, always besides it, called the chaka tree. And this chaka tree is the direct medicine for this poisonous tree. So it's interesting that wherever this poisonous tree grows, always the medicine for that tree is growing. And it's so interesting because they look very alike. They look very similar. Even the flowers, they're the same. They have the same flowers. But one will make you sick and one will heal you. And so it is also when it comes to the material world. So many activities that we can engage in. A lot of the times it's hard to know if it's going to be poisonous or if it's going to be medicinal, or if it's going to be good for the soul, or if it's going to make us sick. But so how do we understand whether actually a specific activity is going to be poisonous for us? We need to cultivate knowledge. That's where knowledge comes in. Because like these people that knew these trees, they had studied these trees, they had been around these trees, and therefore they could recognize it. For me, it just looked like any other tree. I'm not expert at discerning one tree from another, but these people, they saw, actually the shade of this tree is a bit more red and the leaves are a bit more like this. They have the knowledge to discern. So similarly, we need to also cultivate the knowledge coming from Shastra, coming from scriptures, and coming also from the devotees, to learn how to discern what is poisonous and what is beneficial. What should we reject? What should we accept in spiritual life? So, those who are pure, those who are free from the material modes of nature, from ignorance, passion, and goodness, those are the people that we can take this kind of instruction from, because they're not affected by the so-called poison, and they're able to recognize, okay, what is going to help us in spiritual life. It's interesting because, also it can be so hard to, like for example, these material modes of nature, they're very subtle. That's their nature. They're subtle energies, and so we don't know actually what we're under the influence of. But also it's interesting, for example, that we say that nighttime is in the mode of ignorance. But then at night we're able to be contemplative, if we're using this mode correctly, we're able to contemplate and we're able to be meditative and kind of reflective. A lot of people use this time of the day to be reflective because it also awards that. Similarly, for example, if you go out into the forest, we hear from scripture that basically all the living entities in the forest, like the trees, the grass, they're all in the mode of ignorance. They're low consciousness because they aren't able to express certain things that us as humans can express, such as curiosity or propensity for trying to understand the higher, as in God, trying to understand spirituality. These things like trees and grasses, they don't have the capability to do that. But still, when we're in the forest, we feel very in the mode of goodness, right? So this is also there at play. So these energies, they work very subtly, and actually that's something that's been on my mind for a while. How it can be that even though a lot of these things, they are in these certain modes of nature, how they can actually have a different effect, especially if we try to understand it. Such as if we try to understand the nighttime, how we can become more contemplative. If we try to understand, the peacefulness of the forest, we can become more peaceful. So, like that, I think that's why it's so important that we take shelter of these people that are above the material modes of nature, such as the spiritual master, to get guidance from the spiritual master, and in this way we can rise above the material modes of nature. In the purport of this text, it also says that since Krishna is both matter and spirit, the gigantic universal form comprising all material manifestations is also Krishna. And his pastimes in Vrindavan as two-handed Shyamasundar, playing on a flute, are those of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is talking about Lord Shyamasundar. Actually, in the Brahma Samhita, we are able to learn how to understand this Shyamasundar better when we're not under the modes of material nature. And we understand that Krishna is both matter and spirit. So it says, it's in Brahma Samhita 5.38. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shyamasundar, Krishna himself with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts, with the eye of devotion tinged with the salve of love. The salve of love. In the purport, Prabhupada says that the Shyamasundar form of Krishna is his inconceivable, simultaneous, personal and impersonal self-contradictory form. True devotees see that form in their purified hearts under the influence of devotional trance. The form Shyam is not the blue color visible in the mundane world, but is the transcendental variegated color affording eternal bliss and is not visible to the mortal eye. When Krishna manifested himself in Braj, both the devotees and non-devotees saw him with this very eye, but only the devotees cherished him, eternally present in Braj, as the priceless jewel of their heart. Nowadays also the devotees see him in Braj, in their hearts, saturated with devotion, although they do not see him with their eyes. The eye of devotion is nothing but the eye of the pure, unalloyed spiritual self of the jiva. The form of Krishna is visible to that eye in proportion to its purification by practice of devotion. So the form of Krishna is visible to that eye in proportion to its purification by the practice of devotion. And like I said, this practice of devotion can come when we understand that we're not the body, when we understand that Krishna is the supreme controller. And like I said, the secret to success is to take refuge under the protection of the Supreme Lord. And like this, everything will reciprocate, like we saw with Yudhishthira Maharaj. So of course these contaminations, they can come, like for example in the Bhagavatam, when Arjuna came back from the battlefield of Kurukshetra, after Krishna had left this world, Arjuna was crying. He was, on the ground, and he was really lamenting, really upset, and just really suffering. But then it's described that he started thinking about Krishna, all the ways in which their relationship, Krishna and Arjuna, how they were together, and he was really missing this relationship because of, remembering Krishna, smaranam. And then at once he remembered Krishna speaking the Gita, and it said that as at the point where Krishna remembered the Gita, all this lamentation, it went away immediately. He was immediately purified just by remembering Krishna speaking the Gita. So like this, we can see that the Gita is very powerful because it just by remembering it, one can get beyond the lamentations of the mind. Like I was saying, the Gita equips us with immediate knowledge of what to do in the present. But that's not all. I mean, we can act in the present, but also we need to remember the ultimate instruction. We need to remember the ultimate instruction of what happens actually beyond the body, beyond the material modes of nature, beyond death. So does anyone have anything to say so far? Any comments? If not, then I can. Well, maybe someone has something to add, some meditations. Hare Krishna. Sri Sri Radha Gokulananda ki jai. Sri Sri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai. Gaur Nitai ki jai. Yes, Mataji. The verse of the Brahma Samhita.
Yes, please. The fifth verse that you just translated.
Okay, so I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shama Sundar, Krishna himself, with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts, with the eye of devotion, tinged with the salve of love. Tinged with the salve of love. Now for me, I'm trying to figure out what the salve of love is made of, the ingredients of the salve of love. Prabhu, maybe you know.
Well, I heard a Prabhupada lecture. Prabhupada was saying, in the material world, you may not see Krishna directly, but you have to learn to see Krishna through the energies. So the example was given, just like Prabhupada said, whose glasses are these? These are my glasses. And he said, if you go to the ocean beach, you have faith that the ocean will not take you in because ocean has got its limits, how far it comes in. So you have faith that Krishna is giving the ocean its limits, how much it can come in, if you want to take you in. Like this, you can understand the greatness of Krishna through his energies. So in the material world, you learn to see Krishna through the energies. And then by doing that, a time will come when you see Krishna directly.
So first, instead of trying to approach Krishna directly, we should try to approach his energies.
You have to see Krishna through the energies of the material world.
Through the material world. So, for example, like he's saying, I'm the taste in water, I'm the smell of the earth, I'm the light of the sun. Like this. So maybe that answers actually because like I was wondering, why is it that like for example I was saying that we go out into the forest with all these living entities that are said to be in the mode of tamas, the grasses, the trees, etc. But they're energy of Krishna, and I mean compared to a place like a city where there's no living entities all around, we are less able to see Krishna because there's no other living jivas. But in the forest, for example, there's a lot of living jivas, isn't it? So perhaps that's why this kind of this kind of mode of goodness is there. Is that because there's just more living entities, or why is that? Maybe you know, Prabhu.
The mode of goodness is easier to approach Krishna because
Yeah.
it's like example of the wood. Fire is in the wood, but you want the fire to use for your purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So demigods of Brahma and Shiva, they're like the wood. They can't really help you to get it. Vishnu is like the fire. So mode of goodness is like that. It helps you to come to the pure goodness.
So mode of goodness is like the fire that is already there in the wood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Prabhu is saying that it's
It's like a springboard. Mode of goodness is like a springboard to pure goodness. Example given, if you go to the airport, where your destination, you should have a flight you want to catch. So that's why mode of goodness is like that. You go to the airport, and that the destination becomes Krishna, where it comes to pure goodness.
So Prabhu is saying that the mode of goodness is like a springboard in order to get to pure goodness, Shuddha Sattva. And mode of goodness is like having a plane to catch, and the plane will take you to your destination. It's easier to become Krishna conscious, to engage in pure devotional service when you're in the mode of goodness. Yeah. It's very interesting because I imagine also that it can be very easy to get caught up also in the mode of goodness, that we make kind of this mode of goodness our goal. But we need to remember that mode of goodness is just one of the stages. Like, because, for example, we can get so enamored by a flower, the beauty of a flower. Why is a flower so beautiful? Because it's a spark of Krishna, right? It's a part and parcel of Krishna. But because it's a spark of Krishna, that also means it's temporary. Like if you have a fire and a spark comes from it, the spark is a light, and then it dies down, right? It's temporary. So although although it's part and parcel of Krishna, it's still temporary because it's part of the material world. Therefore, if we get attached to it too much, then it can also become a reason for more entanglement. So yes, these sparks, they can take us to Krishna, but also if we don't understand them in the right way, they can entangle us more. Yeah, that's very. Yeah. Yes, Prabhu, David Prabhu.
Just on seeing Krishna, his holiness Kadamba Maharaj, he was challenged, have you ever seen Krishna face to face? And then he said, no, but I've seen his hand 9 times.
So, Kadamba Kanana Maharaj, he said, he was challenged, have you ever seen Krishna face to face? Kadamba Kanana Maharaj, he said, no, but I have seen his hand many times. Right? Yeah. It's very nice. So seeing this hand, this can also be like kind of a springboard to seeing the rest of, like I was saying in the beginning, that the Gita is flowing from the mouth of Krishna. If we bathe ourselves in the Gita, if we submerge ourselves in the Gita, we can flow back to the smiling face of Krishna. If we use these things, then we get to see Krishna in that way. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yes, Mataji. Maybe someone has a microphone. Just-
Try to be loud. Prabhuji mentioned the word control. Krishna, it's Krishna's world and Krishna also controls. It's just coincidental, Prabhu, that the message we have from the Gita is very similar to what Prabhu was just saying. That I give heat and I also withhold it and send forth the rain
Sure.
when I decide to.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. But I wanted to tap your mind space on just what you said about the salve of love, what ingredients it could be. Could you share some examples? I'd love to hear how people express their love to Krishna.
So some of the ingredients of the salve of love you're asking. Yeah. That's a deep question. I mean, that's something that I've also been meditating upon. I only just recently, not very long, but especially reading this verse, I was like, I mean the Brahma Samhita. I was like, what is this salve of love made of? Maybe some senior devotees, they can give their realization upon some of the ingredients of the salve of love. What it comprises of. Maybe.
Prabhupada said, first you have to understand who is Krishna, right? Understanding Krishna, greatness, then your devotion will come. Then surrender will come. First you have to be understanding who is Krishna, how great he is, and how he is your true friend. Then the devotion will come. Then we saw the devotees who are serving Krishna. The devotees have to follow the process, like reading the temple, the program, Sadhana Bhakti. You share realizations. Come to the festivals. So yes, your devotion to Krishna will come.
So first we must understand who is Krishna, and then devotion comes. So understanding and devotion, those are some ingredients.
Understanding Krishna, all the knowledge you require, they reveal to you.
Yeah, I also find that this idea of understanding Krishna, it also actually brings about humility, in a way, and therefore we can say that knowledge and humility, they go hand in hand. For example, if you see a mountain from afar, like, oh, that's a very small mountain, I bet it's not that big. But if we come closer to that, if we start walking closer to this mountain, as in we start getting more knowledge about this mountain, we start to see more of the details, we start to see maybe some trees, more of the ridges, then we see, okay, wow, this mountain is actually much bigger than I thought, and therefore, wow, I'm so small in comparison to this mountain, so therefore, let me take a humble position. So I think, along with what Prabhu said about knowledge and devotion, humility is also there in the ingredients of the salve of love. This is just maybe something, from, I think that is also there. Yeah, maybe someone else has some ideas about what could be in this.
Well, Prabhupada said, if you know the greatness of Krishna, you become humble naturally.
Sorry?
When you understand how great Krishna is, you become humble naturally.
Yeah. If we understand how great Krishna is, we become humble naturally.
And then the other thing is, when you understand how Krishna is dealing with situations, by example, you see how even Krishna is humble.
Hmm. Hmm.
You get happy with someone who's dealing nicely with situations.
Hmm.
Like I read in Gopal Thakur is explaining how the Rajeshwari sacrifice was happening, and everyone was doing different services. Someone was part of treasury, someone was cooking department, someone was cooking donations coming in and guiding the guests and all that. But there was one thing no one was doing is washing the feet of everyone.
Hmm.
So Krishna took that service.
Krishna took the service of washing the feet. So by seeing the hand of Krishna, we also see that he himself is humble. And we're attracted to people that have these kind of qualities. It's very nice. Yes, David Prabhu.
Just in terms of the soul has a natural innate love for Krishna as well. And when we see Krishna, it's not just Krishna, Krishna means his parts and parcels, souls, his energies, and everything. So with the solid of love, it means to see everything in relation to Krishna in that sense, with the love for Krishna. And everything is Krishna's part and everything
Yeah.
parts and parcels.
Yeah. So by seeing Krishna, it also means that we see his parts and parcels, all the other living entities, his paraphernalia, and that's what the salve of love is. We get to see that actually Krishna is not only Krishna but also all the living entities, the paraphernalia. It says also in this verse, right? That was it in this verse? Yeah. In the advanced stage of Krishna consciousness, one therefore makes no such distinctions. He sees only Krishna in everything, because since Krishna is both matter and spirit, the gigantic universal form comprising all material manifestations is also Krishna. So, this understanding that, just by this salve of love we can see, again, the greatness of Krishna, and the humility is there because we understand that everything is part and parcel of Krishna. Krishna is both matter and spirit. And this is huge. This is so massive. Yeah, this is very big. Yeah. Maybe someone has anything else. I like this churning. It's very nice. I don't know.
So the other thing is mentioned in Nectar Chaitanya Prabhupada and even in there how Srimad Bhagavatam and has given how Krishna is soft as a rose and hard as a thunderbolt. So for those who follow his instructions and serve his devotees, Krishna is very kind, he looks after everyone very nicely. And the example is given just like a Dharma, just how the citizens nicely who are following the laws. But then those who don't follow, then they're in the criminal department. They get looked after, but they're under punishment. The same thing with us, because we turned our back on Krishna, we want to try and be like Krishna. When Krishna says, okay, you can try and be like him, right? You can try that. But the human life is an opportunity to turn to Krishna again. So you can come out of this suffering situation, and you can attend your eternal life of bliss and knowledge, full of eternity. So this is where the Krishna consciousness and unity is coming in. To help people enter Krishna's family.
Yeah, this point of that Krishna is as soft as a rose, as soft as a flower, but can also be as hard as a thunderbolt. The same is said also about the devotees. The devotees has also the same quality of being as soft as a flower and as hard as a thunderbolt. But with Krishna we can understand, and also the devotees, we can understand that this is all actually the mercy. Whether or not, they display it in a soft manner or a hard manner. Like I was saying before, that Krishna, he can send these rains in a nice way, where he sends just enough so that the people can sustain themselves in terms of growing their grains and feeding themselves, or he can send raindrops that are as big as the trunks of elephants and that submerge the whole universe. And this is very powerful. But still, it's Krishna's mercy. He is submerging the universe, and he is allowing the living entities to again come into this universe to fulfill their desires. Whether or not it's done in a soft way or hard way, it's Krishna's mercy. And this is what the pure devotees, they see this, that actually, they see this essence that the Krishna's mercy is there, whether or not it's done in a hard or soft way. Especially when it comes to difficulty. They actually rejoice in difficulty because they see it's an opportunity to elevate ourselves, to see Krishna's hand in it, like Prabhu was saying before, seeing Krishna's hand in it. And of course, when it comes to difficulty, it's hard. It's easy to see Krishna's hand in difficulty when it comes to difficulty imposed by ourselves or by nature. Like if we bite our own tongue, we say, that's Krishna's mercy. I'm suffering, I bit my tongue, Thank you, Krishna, for this purification. But when it comes to other people, when it comes to other living entities, causing suffering to us, it can be harder to understand that it's Krishna's mercy, because then we have someone to blame. Clearly there is someone else causing this suffering, so there's someone else to blame. For that reason, sometimes it's harder to understand Krishna's mercy when it comes down to other living entities supposedly causing this suffering. But just being aware that we have this nature that seeing this difficulty not as Krishna's mercy but as something else. I think that's a step to understanding that Krishna's mercy is everywhere, and therefore we can take more steps like this. I think that like these rains that are being talked about here, it's a privilege that can be easily withheld. It really shows the control of Krishna, that easily he can withhold all these privileges if he so wants to. And also that links to the point that if Krishna wants, then, or if Krishna wants, he can cause suffering in order to test us, in order to see how do we react to this suffering. How do we react to this suffering? Will we see it as Krishna's mercy or not? That is also there. So, this mood of that Krishna is kind of the controller of these things, and that Krishna is deciding himself. Okay, what should the living entities deal with? That is really there. I think I might end it here, unless someone else has some more things to say, some comments, some reflections. Gora Arati will be in about 2 minutes. Other than that, thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Srimate Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. No, I think so.
Hare Krishna, Aarti will start in a minute, so can you please take the go forward?
Hey, how are you today? श्री 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 राधा गोकुलानंद की, श्री 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 सीताराम लक्ष्मण हनुमान की, श्री 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 गौर निताय की। बजाय जय गोरचंदे आरती का शोभा। बजाय जय गोरचंदे आरती का शोभा। जानवी दातवाने जगमनलोभा। Nikate Advaita Srini Vasa Shatradhara